It was raining that night, hard. The kind of rain that drowns footsteps and washes away hesitation. I remember standing across the street from that little house, soaked to the bone, clutching a crowbar like it was my last shot at surviving. In many ways, it was. My name's Isaac. Back then, I was just another nobody, jobless, couch surfing, sleeping in abandoned cars, and blaming the world for every bad hand I'd been dealt. I wasn't born bad. But when the bills pile up and pride starts to rot, desperation does the talking. And mine said, steal something. Anything. The house looked empty. No lights, no car, no barking dog. Just the steady flicker of a faulty porch lamp and a rusted mailbox sagging under unopened letters. It felt like a sign. I broke in through the back window, silent, quick, practiced. Inside, the air smelled like old books and lemon soap. The kind of smell that reminds you someone actually lives there. Someone real. Then I heard it. I know you're here. A voice called out. My heart jammed in my throat. I froze mid-step, crowbar trembling in my grip. You don't have to run, she added. I'm not going to scream. Just don't break anything. I didn't answer. My name is Eleanor. I'm blind. Blind? I didn't know what to do. My instincts screamed run, but my feet wouldn't budge. She didn't sound scared. She sounded calm, like she'd been waiting for me. Like this wasn't the first time the world had walked into her home uninvited. I could make you tea, she said, like we were neighbors and not predator and prey. I stood there, dripping, confused, ashamed. The woman I came to rob was offering me comfort. No judgment. No fear. Just kindness. That moment cracked something inside me. I don't know why I said yes, but I did. She moved slowly, feeling her way through the tiny kitchen. I watched her fingers glide across the counter, touching the chipped mugs, the dented kettle. She poured the tea like a ritual, deliberate, careful, graceful. We sat in silence. I didn't say who I was or what I had planned. She didn't ask. She just talked. About the weather. Her garden. The sound of birds in the morning. About how she lost her sight at 35 but never lost her vision of the world's beauty. Then, just before I left, she said something I'll never forget. You're not bad, Isaac. You're just broken. And broken things can still build beautiful futures. I didn't know how she knew my name. I never told her. That night, I walked out with nothing in my hands, but something heavy in my chest. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't fear. It was possibility. And for the first time in years, I wondered if I could be more than what the world had made me. If I could change. After that night, sleep stopped coming easy. I'd close my eyes and see her face, gentle, lined with wisdom, unbothered by my presence like she somehow expected me. Most people would have called the cops, locked their doors tighter, moved away. Not Eleanor. She didn't just see me. She recognized me. The version of me I didn't think existed anymore. That was more frightening than any jail cell. 2 days later, I went back. No crowbar. No backpack. Just a bag of groceries. I barely had the cash to buy. I knocked this time. She opened the door without hesitation. Back so soon, she said, smiling like I was a friend dropping by, not the guy who nearly stole her entire life. I brought you eggs, I muttered, holding the bag like a peace offering. From that day on, I became part of her world, quietly at first, fixing her porch light, reading her the newspaper, walking her to the corner store. She never asked questions about my past. She only cared about where I was heading. I told her I didn't know, that I didn't really see myself doing anything. Then start there, she said. Start seeing. Eleanor didn't see with eyes. She saw through people, through fear, through failure. And slowly, being around her began to clean me. Not in a holy, sudden, miracle way, but in small, gritty, uncomfortable ways, like scrubbing years of grime off a window one layer at a time. I got a job washing dishes at a diner that didn't ask too many questions. Long hours. Low pay. But honest work. It was humbling and, in some twisted way, healing. Every time I thought about quitting, I remembered that chipped teacup in Eleanor's kitchen and her quiet belief in me. She began recommending books, business, mindset, resilience. She couldn't read them anymore, but she remembered every line like they were etched in her memory. One night, she told me a story about a Japanese art called kintsugi, where broken pottery is mended with gold. They don't hide the cracks, she said. They highlight them, because the damage is part of the story. That line shook me. I started looking at things differently. Not just at people, but at objects, machines, systems. I noticed how many devices were thrown away simply because one part was broken. It reminded me of myself, and how Eleanor never tossed me aside. I began buying broken phones from pawn shops, watching repair tutorials late into the night, practicing on dead devices till my fingers were blistered. It was slow, frustrating, obsessive work. But for once, I felt useful. When I fixed my first phone and sold it online for a profit, it felt like I'd pulled off the cleanest heist of my life. Except this time, I didn't take anything. I earned it. I told Eleanor. She just smiled and said, "So, what will you fix next?" I didn't have an answer, but I knew the question would follow me, and I was ready to build a life out of gold-filled cracks. Momentum is a strange thing. At first, it feels like you're dragging it behind you, step by step. Then one day, it starts pulling you forward, and suddenly you're afraid to let go. I spent every free moment repairing busted devices, phones, tablets, watches. At first, it was just something to keep my hands busy, to keep me from slipping back into old ways. But the more I worked, the more I saw a pattern. It wasn't just the devices that were broken. It was the system, the mindset. People throw away what still holds value because it's easier than fixing it, just like they once did to me. I launched a bare-bones website. White background, one banner, pixelated logo. I called it SecondSight Tech. It was Eleanor's idea. "We all deserve a second sight," she said. Another chance to see what we missed. I fixed 2 phones, sold them both. Reinvested the profits. Bought 5 more. Repeated the process. I worked until my hands cramped and my eyes blurred. My bedroom became a chaos of wires, tiny screws, and silent machines waiting for resurrection. I didn't care. For the first time, I had purpose. Of course, it wasn't all wins. I got scammed by a supplier. Sent a repaired tablet to the wrong address. Fried a motherboard the night before it was due. Every mistake cost me time and money I didn't have. But I didn't quit. I couldn't quit. Because quitting meant going back to being invisible. I hired my first helper, Ramon. 17, fresh out of juvie, scared of everything. He reminded me of myself, lost, cautious, raw. I taught him everything I knew. He caught on fast. One day, I walked into the shop and saw him teaching another kid. That's when I realized this was bigger than me. I wasn't just fixing devices. I was creating a cycle of belief. Eleanor's health was declining. She moved slower, spoke softer, but never stopped pushing me. Every great builder, she told me once, started by sweeping the floor of someone else's dream. I swept floors. I wrote every customer email. I packaged every box. Slowly, orders started rolling in, schools needing refurbished tablets, parents looking for affordable tech for their kids, nonprofits requesting bulk deals for low-income families. The demand wasn't just growing, it was shouting. 3 years after that first sale, I landed my first major contract, 5,000 units for a school district in the Midwest. When I got the call, I ran to Eleanor's place. "We did it," I said. "No," she whispered. "You remembered who you are." That night, we celebrated with store-bought cupcakes and lukewarm tea. She couldn't see the spreadsheet showing we'd crossed 6 figures in revenue. But she didn't need to. She could feel it, in the warmth of the room, in the calm between our words, in the quiet satisfaction of a life slowly repaired. I knew I was only at the beginning. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't running from anything. I was running towards something. Success is quiet at first. It whispers in the moments between late nights and early mornings. It hides behind anxiety, doubt, and exhaustion. But if you listen carefully, it starts to hum louder, And when it does, you either run from it or rise to meet it. I chose to rise. By year 4, SecondSight Tech wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. We outgrew my apartment, then the garage I rented, and finally moved into a modest warehouse with room for 6 workstations. Every wall bore the fingerprints of growth. Whiteboards filled with scribbles, shelves lined with spare parts, posters of tech blueprints and motivational quotes. Eleanor's favorite hung by the door. Fix what you can, forgive what you can't. I brought in more help, people no one else wanted. A single mother with no resume but fierce determination. A veteran with PTSD. 2 young men who had been locked up for theft, just like I once was. They didn't need second chances. They needed belief. They needed dignity. And we gave them both. Then came the call that changed everything. A nonprofit that supplied schools in underserved communities wanted to partner with us. The deal? Refurbish 20,000 devices in 6 months. My first instinct was fear. That voice in my head, the old one, whispered, "You're just a thief with a fancy business card. Who do you think you are?" But Eleanor's voice drowned it out. "If you only bet on sure things, you'll never change anything." So I said yes. We scaled fast, doubled staff, ordered inventory, built systems to track, test, and ship thousands of devices without sacrificing quality. I slept 4 hours a night and spent every waking moment solving problems. Logistics, payroll, tech bugs, human emotion. There were days I wanted to quit. Days I cried in my car before walking into the office with a smile. But we delivered. On time. Under budget. Better than expected. The school district sent handwritten letters from kids. Now I can learn coding like my big brother, one read. I taped that letter to my desk. And yet, when a major tech corporation approached me with an offer, $8 million for everything, I hesitated. $8 million. More than I ever dreamed of. More than enough to vanish, to live quietly, to finally be safe. I visited Eleanor that night. She sat near the window, wrapped in a faded shawl, sipping tea as always. "What would you do?" I asked. She didn't pause. "If it's just about the money," she said, "you'll always feel poor." The next day, I turned down the offer. Not because I didn't want the money, but because I finally understood something deeper. My business wasn't just about tech, it was about transformation. We began opening satellite workshops in underfunded neighborhoods, training people, employing those society forgot. Every hire was a battle won. Every paycheck a declaration. You are not broken. By year 7, we crossed $100 million in revenue. But numbers never told the full story. What mattered was this. I was no longer a man trying to escape his past. I was building a future others could walk into. I used to think $1 million was the mountaintop. But when you reach the summit, you realize the real climb has just begun. 10 years after fixing my first cracked phone screen on a kitchen table, SecondSight Tech went public. $3.1 billion. The moment the valuation flashed across the screen, I didn't cheer. I didn't throw a party. I closed my laptop, sat back in my chair, and cried. Not for the money, but for the journey, for the weight I had carried, for the woman who first saw gold in the rust. Eleanor wasn't there to see the IPO. She was in hospice, tucked in a quiet room that smelled of lavender and memories. I visited her as often as I could. Each time, she looked smaller, but her presence never faded. She didn't need updates on spreadsheets. She wanted stories. About people. I told her about Malik, the former inmate now leading our training division. About Anna, the teen mom who became our youngest systems engineer. About the 4 new workshops we opened in Detroit, Phoenix, Memphis, and Newark. About the thousands of students in underserved schools who now had laptops, devices we once pulled from dumpsters. She gripped my hand and said, "You didn't build a business. You built belief." That was the last full conversation we had. A week later, she passed. She left no inheritance, no property, no will. Just a small wooden box with her favorite teacup, a braille letter, and a note that read, "Light isn't what your eyes see. It's what your soul gives." I read it aloud 100 times. Then I built something that would carry her voice further than mine ever could. I launched Eleanor's Echo, a foundation dedicated to empowering overlooked talent, formerly incarcerated individuals, the disabled, those written off by society. We offered training, scholarships, seed funding for their ideas. We gave them the tools to not just find jobs, but create them. I took no salary from the foundation. I didn't need it. I had enough. What I wanted now was to multiply belief, across borders, across industries, across generations. 1 month later, I spoke on stage at a global summit in Dubai. Entrepreneurs from every corner of the planet sat in rows, dressed in tailored suits, watching as I walked up in sneakers and a faded jacket Eleanor once repaired for me. I didn't talk about profits or margins. I talked about Eleanor, about the power of being seen, even when you're lost, about fixing things that look worthless, about how a blind woman gave a thief his first vision of what life could be. When I left the stage, someone called me a genius. They didn't know I was just a student. My teacher had no degree, no eyesight, only grace, grit, and a boundless ability to love the unlovable. She never lived to see my billions, but she was the billion. She was the beginning. And now, she's the echo in every heart we help rebuild. People ask me what success feels like. They expect words like freedom, power, wealth. But success, real success, feels like quiet, like peace you fought tooth and nail for, like walking into a room full of people you've helped, and knowing that even if you said nothing, the room would still be better for your presence. It feels like Eleanor. 15 years have passed since I broke into that house. The world now knows me as a billionaire tech entrepreneur. There are headlines, podcasts, magazine covers, documentaries. Strangers quote me in business seminars. Young founders message me daily asking how I did it. But none of them saw the early mornings when I couldn't afford coffee. Or the nights I went to bed terrified I'd fail the people who believed in me. None of them sat in that kitchen with chipped mugs and a blind woman offering tea to a thief. The truth? I didn't build a company. Eleanor built me from the wreckage of who I was. Now I pass it on. I spend my time mentoring leaders from the same places I came from. Not the Ivy Leagues. Not the venture capital circuits. I mean shelters, rehab centers, juvenile halls, streets. People with potential so raw it scares them. People who just need one person to see them. The foundation has grown. We've expanded across continents: Nigeria, India, Brazil, the Philippines. Every workshop bears Eleanor's name. Every trainee reads her story on the first day. They learn not just how to fix devices, but how to repair dignity, stitch purpose into broken places, and become architects of their own lives. We've repaired over 10 million devices, trained 85,000 individuals, funded 3,400 microbusinesses. And yet, I know numbers are just shadows. What matters more is the mother in Detroit who can now video call her son in college. The refugee boy in Lebanon learning to code on a tablet we restored. The deaf girl in Chile building software for accessibility tools we never thought possible. That's the lighthouse. That's legacy. Not a name engraved on a building, but light cast into darkness, guiding others home. As for me, I still live simply. Same hoodie, same shoes, same small house, though it's filled now with laughter, people, purpose. I keep Eleanor's teacup on my desk. Some days, when I'm overwhelmed, I hold it like a compass. It reminds me I wasn't saved by strategy or hustle or timing. I was saved by compassion, by a blind woman who chose to see me. And because of her, I've spent my life making sure others are seen too. So, if you're watching this, waiting for the world to give you permission to become who you were meant to be, hear me now. You are not your past. You are not your pain. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are the light. And your legacy is already waiting on the other side of your next decision.